on Monday. Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. Giddy up. All right, everybody, how are you doing? This is Sunday on Monday. After a long 4-day weekend, everybody's back at work. Thinking about the holidays coming up. Yes, indeed. Coming up, it's Christmas, or as I like to call it, Xmas. And now we have the end of the year in our sights, and only the winter to endure before the spring. I'm thinking about how this year I'm sure we're going to see a lot of evidence of anti-Christmas. And, of course, the NPR crowd is going to come out with their annual offering of some disgusting rendition of Christ or the Virgin Mary. Generally, they like to see those two individuals or those people in history dripped in urine. That's generally the avant-garde artistic talent of the progressive socialist left. And of course, if you saw anything like that being done to Islam, there'd be riots in the street and people hung and killed and stoned to death. Just kind of ironic, you know. I am the Trailer Park Prophet, so I can look into the future and I can see this stuff. And I have a hunch this Christmas season that the anti-Christians, the Christian haters out there, are going to be unusually cruel in their attack on Christianity. I'm looking in my plastic crystal ball right now, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of government-sponsored so-called artwork, which is really hate art against Christianity, and I just have a feeling that this year it's going to reach its pinnacle. All right? That's a little prediction for you. I'm trying to decide where to start off today. There's a lot to talk about. It's definitely an interesting time in the United States. Everyone over the weekend was talking about how Obamacare is failing, and of course we'll have time to get into that. And I've got a couple really interesting stories that are a little off the main beat. I got the Drudge Report right here. I don't go on Drudge Report that much, or really at all. I think maybe I've been on there maybe 3 times. I'm on there right now, and let's see here. I don't see anything. Oh, here's Rouhani, the president of Iran. We got an Iranian story we're going to do today, and it says our enrichment will never stop. And there's a bunch of stories and a lot of talk about the so-called agreement that the USA and the P5+1 are trying to work out with Iran in their nuclear arms program. And basically, it was what we read to you on Monday. It's a really weird kind of 3-tiered agreement where there has to be certain targets hit at each level. And we read it out loud. I mean, we got that report from a very reliable source. I'm trying to think, where did that come from? The Council on Foreign Affairs. And basically, just reading that thing out loud, if you listen to it, it's just fraught with peril, and there's all kinds of escape hatches in that agreement with Iran. No way that that's going to happen. Let's see. White House denies planning trip. A lot of people have been talking about how Obama has spent a lot of money traveling around the world, and how he'll go to like his family will go to Hawaii or they'll go to someplace in Africa, and the family will travel on one plane and the president will travel on another jet. And there was that one time where the dog Bo actually flew on a third jet to the Obama's vacation destination. But you're seeing more and more of these stories out there, people talking about, hey man, what's going on with the president? He's spending a lot of money on Air Force One, and the majority of the time he's out there campaigning. He's using Air Force One to be his campaign vehicle, which is his right, I understand, and it's not hard to put together a public event so that you can charge the political half of the trip to the voters, to the taxpayers. I have a picture right here. On the Drudge Report, it shows that famous picture when President Obama, remember when he went through the Middle East in 2009 on what some termed his apology tour? Well, he visited Saudi Arabia, and here's that famous picture of President Obama, and he's greeting the Saudi Arabian prince. I can't think of his name, but President Obama is bowing big time. I mean, he's not at like a full 90 degree, but I mean, he's close. I mean, his head's down and his eyes are towards the ground. And I remember seeing that for the first time. I don't ever want to see a president of the United States, whether they're half black and half white like the president, or when the day comes that the president of the United States is a woman, hopefully a black woman, that they never bow to the king of Saudi Arabia like President Obama did in 2010. I mean, looking at this picture, it just kind of disgusts me. And it almost looks as if people are kind of looking at Obama. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people around President Obama and the king. And they're kind of looking at Obama like, why are you bowing like that? They're all looking with their heads down. It looks like maybe Obama's going to try to pick up a quarter off the ground or something, off the carpet there. I don't know. Bloomberg busted golfing in Bermuda during trial derailment. I don't know what that's about. Bloomberg busted golfing in Bermuda during trial derailment. Let's see. Oh, something about Chris Christie's bizarre behavior could undermine his presidential chances. I wonder what the hell that's all about. Man, you would think that Chris Christie is one of the polished politicians and knows how not to goof something up or act like a goofball or weird or something. Bizarre is the word they're using. And I want to read this. This could be good. I might have to spend some more time on the Drudge Report. It says here, Governor Chris Christie's bizarre behavior is refusing to say he'll support a possible GOP challenger in the Como next year would derail his chances to become president. State and national GOP insiders have told the Post, quote, Christie already has a problem with many Republicans refusing to forgive him because of his embrace of President Obama and his socially liberal policies, said a nationally prominent GOP operative, quote, but this bizarre behavior in suggesting he won't help a Republican defeat a Democratic governor, and a Como no less, could finish off his chances of becoming his party's nominee for president in 2016. The operative continued. Como claimed last week that Christie, the new head of the Republican Governors Association, I didn't know that. That's a real powerful position. An organization whose purpose is to elect GOP governors has quickly called him to say the Post was wrong in reporting the New Jersey governor was ready to back Westchester County Executive Rob Astornio should he become the Republican nominee for governor next year. I spoke to Governor Christie this morning, who told me the exact opposite. Como contended in reference to last week's Inside Albany column, but Christie spokesman Colin Reed refused to confirm Como's claim, referring questions to Christie's political consultant and longtime GOP operative Mike Duhane, who otherwise refused comment. And in case you're not like a political or a wannabe political like the Trailer Park Prophet, the politics in party politics is that you always have to support your party's nominee for big races like governor and U.S. senator and president and stuff like that. So this has got to be some kind of a mix-up in the Chris Christie camp, but maybe not. But who knows? I mean, Chris Christie may be thinking, you know what? I've done my internal polling, which Christie probably has done, and looked at what would happen if Christie was the nominee for the Republican Party to run for the Republican cause in 2016, and maybe he sees numbers that show that he can't, one, win the nomination in the Republican Party for president, and two, can't win as a Republican. He may have numbers that look like that, and he might be thinking the best thing for him to do would be to switch to the Democratic Party, which everyone would embrace him, and then run for president as a Democrat, a conservative Democrat. Stranger things have happened, I'm a-telling you. All right, here, let's move on. I'm going to start with this story. This is an important story. I know everyone's talking about Iran and Obamacare not working. Which, by the way, speaking of Obamacare, did you happen to see that, of course, as of the 1st of December, Obamacare was supposed to be up and running. And there's a report today, we might have time to get to it, that only 82% of the target enrollees for the Obamacare have been met. And hopefully we have time to get to another story. CNN was live and they were trying to get onto the Obamacare website and it collapsed live on TV. Not a good thing. Okay, this story comes from Pat Dullard. He has his own website. And I've talked about this a lot, about how one of the objectives of the progressive socialist movement is to change the age of consent for young people so that older people can have sex with young kids. Basically, the age of consent is the age at which a individual legally can give consent to have sex with them. Age of consent. And like Colorado is one of the lowest as far as ages. It's 16 years of age that a person is thought to be of the basic kind of like the age of the majority, you know, an adult, and that they have the capacity, the mental wherewithal to be able to consent to have sex. And in other states, it's 17. A few states, I think, if I remember correctly, it's 15. And then other states are 17 and 18 years old as the age of consent. Varies by state to state. And like I said, a lot of people can't believe this, but one of the tenets of the progressive socialist movement is to allow for the age of consent to be dropped lower. And a lot of us consider that pedophilia. But this has been an issue within the progressive socialist movement, and one of their godfathers, Michael Foucault, who was a gay man, he talked about this in terms of society needs to revisit the issue about pedophilia. And Michael Foucault, who is one of the godfathers of the progressive socialist movement, was a gay man and traveled all over the world with his gay partner. In fact, Foucault was actually in Iran when the Shah got overthrown. God knows what this guy was doing in Iran, but at any rate, Michael Foucault, you Google it, and there's a lot of other prominent progressive socialist type leaders and intellectuals who feel like this guy here, the story we're going to do today, from the Northern Colorado Gazette, says here, using the same tactics as gay rights activists, pedophilia have begun to seek similar status, arguing their desire for children is a sexual orientation no different than heterosexual and homosexuals. Critics of the homosexual lifestyle have long claimed that once it became acceptable to identify homosexuality as simply an alternative lifestyle or sexual orientation, logically nothing would be off limits. Gay activists have taken offense at such a position, insisting this would never happen. However, psychiatrists are now beginning to advocate redefining pedophilia in the same way homosexuality was redefined several years ago. So there you have it, starting right with the psychiatrist. You know, right with the Sigmund Freuds of the world. In 1973, the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. A group of psychiatrists with the B4U Act recently held a symposium, I love that word, proposing a new definition of pedophilia in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders of the APA. The B4U Act calls pedophilias, quote, minor attracted people, end of quote. The organization's website states its purpose is to help mental health professionals learn more about attractions to minors and to consider the effects of stereotyping, stigma, and fear. You think I'm kidding? I don't know how many times I told people this, and they think I'm out of my cotton-picking mind, but there you go. And also, let me announce, this is Daniel Gray. I am the Trailer Park Prophet, broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio from beautiful Crestone, Colorado. And I wanted to say, it looks like we're going to get another snowstorm. We got dumped on a week and a half ago, and now it looks like that we're going to get another big dumper here in Crestone. So bring it on. We need the agua. All right, moving on. In 1998, the APA issued a report claiming that the negative potential of adult sex with children was overstated, and that the vast majority of both men and women reported no negative sexual effects from childhood sexual abuse experiences. Pedophilia has already been granted protection status by the federal government. The Matthew Shepard and the James Boyd J. Hate Crimes Prevention Act lists sexual orientation as a protected class. However, it does not define the term. Isn't that lovely? So now we're just one court case away from legalizing pedophilia. Republicans attempted to add an amendment specifying that pedophilia is not covered as an orientation. However, the amendment was defeated by Democrats. See, Rep. Alcee Hastings D. from Florida stated that an alternative sexual lifestyle should be protected under the law. Quote, this bill addresses our resolve to end violence against or based on prejudice and to guarantee that all Americans, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability, or all of these philias as fetishes and isms that were put forward need not live in fear because of who they are, I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this rule. I shouldn't be laughing. The White House praised the bill, saying, at root, this isn't just about our laws, this is about who we are as people. No kidding there. This is about whether we value one another, whether we embrace our differences rather than allowing them to become the source of animus. So, when you get excited that some adult is doinking your 13-year-old girl or some guy's doinking your 13-year-old boy, don't make that a source of animus, all right? Earlier this year, 2 psychologists in Canada declared that pedophilia is a sexual orientation just like homosexuality or heterosexuality. Well, it's nice they brought up the heterosexuals out there. Van Dershenham, psychologist and retired professor of the University of Montreal, told the members of Parliament, quote, pedophilias are not simply people who commit a small offense from time to time, but rather are grappling with what is the equivalent to a sexual orientation, just like another individual may be grappling with heterosexuality or even homosexuality. Which is basically saying that if you have feelings to have sex with the kid, that, now you're the victim. You see how this works? I mean, we as a society decide what we think is moral and immoral. And we as a society utilize rule of law to actually put out there markers in society that we find acceptable and not acceptable. And now now they're making the pedophilias feel like they're the victims because they feel like society doesn't approve of them having sex with children. I mean, we really kind of live in upside down world here. I don't think I'm speaking for myself when I say that children are innocent and sometimes impulsive. And I find it hard to believe that a child having sex with an adult doesn't somehow affect them from the neck up. You know what I mean? He went on to say that true pedophilias have an exclusive preference for children, which is the same as having a sexual orientation. You cannot change this person's sexual orientation. He may, however, remain abstinent. I mean, so maybe, a lot of guys in prison right now have a sexual orientation of wanting to rape people. You know what I mean? Violently rape people. Now, these children, in my mind, some of them are being violently raped, but in another way, they're being psychologically raped into being convinced that they're mature enough to have what I would consider an adult relationship. When asked if he should be comparing pedophilias to homosexuals, Van Guchenheim replied, for instance, if you were living in a society where heterosexuality is prescribed or prohibited and you were told that you had to get therapy to change your sexual orientation, you would probably say that that is slightly crazy. In other words, you would not accept that at all. I use that analogy to say that, yes, indeed, pedophilias do not change their sexual orientation. I mean, this is... this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not even sure what to even say about that. Again, they're trying to couch the pedophilia as a victim here. And then they use this ridiculous... I hate it when people use hypotheticals. Hypotheticals just drive me cuckoo. Now, Dr. Wimsey, professor emeritus of psychology at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, agreed with Van Justenheim. Quinsley said pedophiles' sexual interests prefer children, and there is no evidence that this sort of preference can be changed through treatment or through anything else. Now, if this is a woman of letters, which she proscribes or whatever to be, then where's your proof, Dr. Quinsley? Although here we go. Okay, here's the proof. Sorry about that. In July 2010, Harvard Health publication said, quote, pedophilia is a sexual orientation and unlikely to change. Treatment aims to enable someone to resist acting on his sexual urges. Linda Harvey of Mission America said the push for pedophilias to have equal rights will become more and more common as the LGBT group continue to assert themselves. Quote, it's all part of a plan to introduce sex to children at a younger and younger ages to convince them that normal friendship is actually sexual attraction. Oh my God, that's sick. Milton Diamond, the University of Hawaii professor and director of the Pacific Center for Sex and Society, stated that child pornography could be beneficial to society because, quote, potential sex offenders use child pornography as a substitute for sex against children. Here again, the pedophile is the victim. They have to go to child pornography to get their fix. So society is making pedophilias to go out of their way. Diamond is a distinguished lecturer for the Institute of Advanced the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco. The IASHS openly advocated for the repeal of the Revolutionary War ban on homosexuals serving in the military. The IASHS lists are on website a list of basic sexual rights that include, quote, the right to engage in sexual acts or activities of any kind whatsoever, providing they do not involve non-consensual acts, violence, constraint, coercion, or fraud. Another right is to be free of persecution, condemnation, discrimination, or societal intervention in private sexual behavior. And the freedom of any sexual thought, fantasy, or desire. So, in essence, this also sort of gives a green light to those that want to hump the beasts. As long as the beast doesn't mind being humped, then the freedom of any sexual thought, fantasy, or desire shall prevail. The organization also says that no one should be, quote, disadvantaged because of age. Oh my God. Disadvantaged because of age. People that are older and more experienced, they're disadvantaged because of age if they want to have sex with children. They're victims. They're making these pedophiles out to be victims. And then it finishes on, sex offender laws prohibiting children have been challenged in several states, including California, Georgia, and Iowa. Sex offenders claim the laws prohibiting them from living near schools or parks are unfair because it penalizes them for life. Yeah, that's the idea of having a penalty. You know, particularly when you violate the innocence of children, we want that penalty to last for life. When I was younger, I used to say that I felt that there is one part of Islam I had some respect for, and that was stoning people to death for certain offenses. And I used to say in the 70s that rapists and child abusers should be stoned, because what they did was so offensive to our social contract that it went beyond the confines of cruel and unusual punishment that we restrict in this country, and would allow for an exception in that clause in the Constitution about cruel and unusual punishment for people that committed rape and who raped children. But obviously that's not the feeling of modern Islam, and that's not the feeling of the progressive socialist movement. And here's another connection. You think I'm cuckoo, some people do, when I talk about how the progressive socialist movement are in bed with radical Islam, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And the progressive socialist movement and radical Islam share the same enemy in capitalism, the United States, our constitutional republic, our rule of law, and they don't. In both the progressive socialist movement and radical Islam share the same feelings about children. Let's not forget that, because it's no mistake, particularly on this issue, that progressive socialist and radical Islam have the same almost exact feelings about sex with children. I mean, those guys in the Middle East, they marry girls as young as 9. No, 7. I saw one the other day. This guy married a little girl of 7, and he didn't consummate the marriage until she was 9. 9 years old. Do you think guys my age should be doinking 9-year-olds? And this lady here, she writes, Melissa Casmon Botano. Well, sick people, really sick people. Understand one thing. If a lifestyle is acceptable, then why have all these nasty people hidden in the shadows for eons? Logic dictates that if it is so acceptable, then it would have been in the open and legal since the dawn of time. Give me a break. And Melissa brings up a good point too. I mean, all the citations that we cited were from professors in academia. And so you can imagine that this is what professors talk about in the professor break room or at cocktail parties all the time. This is the kind of stuff they talk about. Pedophilia and how rotten America is and how we need socialism. But pedophilia is one of the things that progressive socialist professors talk about. And this one Linnaeus writes, there is no logic where there is an open liberal mouth. This other guy writes, there is no logic in this statement. For a list of what to think or thank a liberal for, do a search. No liberal on this planet would be okay with this. See, this person's absolutely wrong. This is what they don't understand. That's the disconnect of your rank and file liberal, your foot soldier liberal, and the leadership elite within the Democratic Party and the progressive socialist movement. They have no idea this is going on. And he goes on to say, he says, no liberal on this planet would be okay with this. So clearly, maybe open your mouth less and listen with the intent to learn more. See, this guy, this liberal's rejecting this. This is why I know I'm swimming upstream on this issue of pedophilia in the progressive socialist movement, because it sounds so ridiculous that it's hard to believe. And myself, I thought about this a lot too, and I thought, man, this can't be true. I've been following this for years. And I thought, no, I better not come forward with this. That sounds like crazy talk. But now all these pedophilias are coming out of the woodwork, and you can see without a doubt that they're in the Democratic Party, and that they are exactly like radical Islam in terms of rights for kids. It's amazing. You're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray. We're broadcasting live from Gunnison, Colorado. This is Sunday on Monday. Hope everybody is warm and in good spirit. And let's see, this one more person says, wasn't the term liberal meaning liberated, thus freedom of expression? Interesting how liberal now means a political genre. Huh. Alright, enough of that pedophilia stuff. But, you know, if you don't believe me, you can look it up for yourself. And don't forget, look up Michael Foucault. Alright, let me get to the top of the show here. Can you believe it? December the 2nd. Ay. This is kind of funny. I really got a kick out of this. If you go to my Facebook page, Daniel Gray, you can see this picture. It's pretty funny. It shows a Muslim man with his wife. It's got a picture of him. It's a portrait of this young couple, this young man and wife. And the man looks fairly handsome, and his wife is in the black habib. So you can't see her face, you can't see her hands, you can't see any of her skin, and there they are, you know, the man, the husband's got his arm around the woman, she's got the black habib on, you can't see her face, and the caption is, let's see, well, I don't know, I don't need to read it to you, it's kind of funny though. It says the nice thing about marrying Muslim is that if you get a divorce, you don't have to change the picture because every woman looks the same with her face covered up in the black habib. And I wrote, though, the only difference is, and the rest of the story is, that in Islam, if you decide to divorce your husband, if a woman decides to divorce her husband, that's cause for the husband to kill his wife. In Islam, if your wife decides to leave you and wants a divorce, then you have a right in Islam to kill her. Don't forget that. All right, this is breaking news on the Drudge Report. This story comes from the Free Beacon, the Washington Free Beacon, and the headline reads like this: Iran White House lying about details of nuke deal. I told you. Iranian officials say White House fact sheet is invalid. Iranian officials say that the White House is misleading the public about the details of the interim nuclear agreement reached over the weekend in Geneva, this weekend. Iran and Western nations, including the United States, came to an agreement on a framework for an interim deal late Saturday night in Geneva. The deal has yet to be implemented. The White House released a multi-page fact sheet containing details of the draft agreement shortly after the deal was announced. I think I read that. However, Iranian foreign minister officials on Tuesday rejected the White House's version of the deal as, quote, invalid, and accused Washington of releasing factually inaccurate primer that misleads the American public. What? President Obama mislead the American public? Quote, what has been released by the website of the White House as a fact sheet is a one-sided interpretation of the agreed text in Geneva, and some of the explanations and the words in the sheet contradict the text of the joint plan of action. And this fact sheet was unfortunately been translated and released in the name of the Geneva Agreement by certain media, which is not true, said the Foreign Ministry spokesman Marajad Hafan told the Iranian press on Tuesday. This is a damn mess. This is a diplomatic nightmare. Afram an official said that the White House has, quote, modified the key details of the deal and released their own version of the agreement in the fact sheet. So they're basically saying that the White House is intentionally deceiving the American people. And something else is kind of interesting here. That, this is actually the Iranian government going directly to the press. And the press directly publishing what the Iranian government is saying. I mean, Iran is causing a lot of insult to injury to the Obama administration. And this guy Afram went on to say Iran's right to enrich uranium, the key component of the nuclear weapon, is fully recognized under the draft release of Tehran. Quote, this comprehensive solution would enable Iran to fully enjoy its right to nuclear energy for peaceful purposes under the relevant articles of the NPT in conformity with the obligations therein. The agreement reads, according to a copy released in Iranian state-run media, quote, listen to this. This comprehensive solution would involve a mutually defined enrichment program with practical limits on transparency measures to ensure the peaceful nature of the program. The Iranian draft reads, this comprehensive solution would constitute an integral whole where nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So basically what they're saying is that this agreement, this three-tiered agreement that the White House is out there touting as a foreign diplomatic success for the Obama administration, is not the same agreement that Iran agreed to. I mean, they're basically coming out and calling the Obama administration liars. It says here, the 6-month clock would have started early Sunday morning, said former Ambassador Mike Wallace, CEO of the United Against a Nuclear Iran. Quote, if this is a serious agreement, the P5+1 must ensure that these negotiations do not become a tool for Iran to further increase enrichment abilities. Oh, yeah. And this all the while that the U.S. has released some $5 billion to the Iranian government in advance of this agreement being actually formalized. What a surprise. President Obama lying to the American people. I guess I'm not too surprised. But I'm really disappointed. I really am. As much as I am a partisan, I'm more of a American first and a believer in our Constitution. What's this? Jesse Jackson brazenly claims there would be no Black Friday fights if we raise minimum wage. Oh, here's Howard Dean. Remember, he was the head of the Democratic Party and he ran for president. He says here, Howard Dean, a liberal Democrat, says decisions about health care should rest with the federal government, not the individual employers. So much for having a free country, huh? You people out there aren't smart enough to decide for yourself what kind of health coverage you want. But the Ivy League professors know what you need. Okay, we read that one. Oh, this is a story I want to do. I guess, I mentioned this before. I'm adopted, and my mother got pregnant, probably was raped, might have been a prostitute. At any rate, her family probably didn't want anything to do with her. This is back in 1955. And she gave me up to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church cut her a deal that if they took care of her, I imagine this is how it works. The Catholic Church had these little sort of like apartment complex. I guess some of them would be like dorms, and pregnant women could go there out of the sight of the public and come to term with their kid. And then the deal was the Catholics paid the bill for the women to go through their pregnancy in one of these Catholic dormitories or apartments, and then the deal was the Catholic Church got the babies. And the Catholic Church basically took the babies and then they adopted them out to the Catholic flock for a price. No kidding. So at some point in time, the people that adopted me had to put up some money to buy me, basically. I mean, they call it tidings, or they have some fancy name for it, but basically the Catholic Church. And I mean, you can argue the Catholic Church had every right to recoup their investment for putting my mom up for a few months and feeding her, and, you know, who knows. So anyway, Catholic Church remains opposed to Obamacare. I mean, when is the Catholic Church going to wake up? And I have to tell you, I don't have a whole lot of respect for the Catholic Church because, on one hand, their number one issue is abortion. And who's against abortion? The Republicans. But who does the Catholic Church support? Democrats. So I have no respect for the Catholic Church. None whatsoever. And basically, the Catholic Church is for progressive socialism, or at least the socialism part of it. They believe government is better suited, better tempered to operate the affairs of humanity than are all these grubby voters like we have in the USA. But then remember, this is coming on the heels. This story is coming on the heels of one we did last week where the Obama administration has decided to take away their embassy from the Vatican, the Catholic Church. And this is nothing but a huge slap in the face of the Catholic Church. Huge slap. And if the Obama administration was going to do this, why did they wait till after the second election? Because generally it said that the direction the Catholic Church votes, or the Catholics vote in the Catholic Church, is the way the election goes. So for many years now, if you were going to be president, you had to get a majority of the Catholic vote. But it's like these Catholics, they're kind of dumb. I called them dummies. I think they're dummies. And this story here is by P.M. Robinson. It says, according to Fox News, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, cool guy, he's the Archbishop of New York, said Sunday that the Catholic Church remains opposed to Obamacare in large part because it requires businesses to offer health insurance plans that include no-cost contraception. Dolan, the former president of the U.S. Catholic Bishops' Conference, said that the Church's position is a difficult one, considering it has supported universal, affordable, and comprehensive health care since the early 90s. We bishops have really been in kind of a tough place, Dolan said on NBC's Meet the Press yesterday. Quote, that's how far we go in this battle. We're not Johnny-come-latelys. He also warned President Obama that the contraceptive mandate has signature health care law might push aside some of his biggest supporters. Like, he doesn't care. Bishop, are you really this dumb? He went on to say, we want to be with you. We want to be strong. If you keep doing this, we're not going to be able to be one of your cheerleaders. Well, what about your 501 status of the Catholic Church? I thought if you get the 501 nonprofit status that you're not supposed to be political. Well, it sure as hell sounds like you're political there, Cardinal Dolan. Saying that the Catholic Church isn't going to be their cheerleaders anymore? What the hell is going on in this guy's head? The Obama administration has kicked the Catholic Church in the butt every chance they get. And here's this guy, I mean, I've seen him a number of times, Cardinal Dolan, and he's acting like he's not aware of the real world around him. And he says here, let's see, where was I? Lost my place here. Yeah, he says, he says, we want to be with you, we want to be strong, and if you keep doing this, we're not going to be able to be one of your cheerleaders, said Dolan. Several days after the Supreme Court agreed to hear a challenge to the mandate by the Christian-owned retail chain Hobby Lobby, Dolan also said he was disappointed that Congress has failed to pass an immigration reform and put the blame on the Republican-led House that has yet to vote on the issue. You guys have got to get your act together, he said. We're not going to let you guys off the hook. We're disappointed. Dolan also acknowledged that efforts to make same-sex marriage legal across the country appear to be gaining momentum. He says, I think I'd be a Pollyanna to say there doesn't seem to be the kind of stampede to do this. He said, I regret that. He also suggested that the church has been out-marketed by or on the issue, that forces such as Hollywood and high-profile political leaders who support the change. And so he goes after the Republicans, the only ones that are in support of the Catholic Church's effort to end or curb abortion. He attacks the Republicans for not getting comprehensive immigration reform, and who gives aid and comfort to the illegal aliens here? The Catholic Church. Who supports law breaking in the country? The Catholic Church. And they say their most important issue is abortion, but yet they don't support the politicians that support their position. The Catholic Church makes absolutely no sense to me. And they appear to be just sort of deaf or blind to the real world. Hello, Cardinal Dolan. President Obama just revoked the U.S.'s embassy at the Vatican. I mean, when are you going to get a picture? I mean, really, Cardinal Dolan, how do you get that damn dumb? That's my question. All right, hard to know. All right, this is kind of an interesting story. You know, we report on this a lot. We talked a lot about Fast and Furious, which was a gun running program run out of the Obama administration Justice Department. And Bush had a similar program. It was called Wide Receiver. And the point of these gun running schemes, as best I can understand, is that the government, vis-a-vis tobacco, firearms, and whatever that other one is, they decide that what they want to do is they'll release guns, and a lot of these guns are high-powered so-called assault weapons, and they allow these guns to get into people's hands, and they're supposed to have some sort of a tracking element on them, and then the government is able to track the guns and where they go into Mexico, so that the federal government aiding the Mexican government would be able to better help the Mexican government know where the drug cartel activity is taking place in Mexico. That's generally how a gun running operation would work, but it's key, as you can imagine, that the guns have the tracking element in them. So they're sold in the U.S., and basically the government sends somebody to a legal gun store, and the gun store is notified that this individual is to be given guns. They get these guns, and then they track them through the U.S. on down to Mexico into the drug lords' hands, which, by the way, Fast and Furious, those guns have killed over 300 people. But in the case with Fast and Furious, under the Justice Department, the Obamacare Justice Department, they didn't put the tracking elements in the guns. And the scuttlebutt on the internet was that this was going to be used as a false flag by the Obama administration to say that, hey, look, you know, these guns are out there, they're killing innocents, and we need to tighten down gun control laws. A lot of people said that this was a false flag that the Obama administration was initiating through this fast and furious gun running scheme. Who knows? The Mexican president was mad as hell about it because the Obama administration didn't tell him about fast and furious. But here it says this: the conservative infidel cartel hangs 2 girls, 25 missing in a month. We fight. Oh yeah, we might not hear much of it in our news, but the cartel war has not died down in any way. In the last month, 25 girls have been abducted. Recently, 2 have been found hanging from a bridge in Fresnillo, Zacatecas, after they were taken by the drug cartel gang. Their intent was to gather information on the Los Zetas. The girls had affiliations with the Zetas. This fight is over territory. The CG or the CDG is moving in on the Los Zetas, and it is all about retaliation. It is relevant to us because of the map. These are border towns. We know they have no value for human life, and how close this is to some of our towns. We need to make sure we inform each other what is going on, since we cannot count on anyone else to do so. And you know, we reported here on the Trailer Park Prophet Show of several incidences inside the United States of this kind of brutal gang activity. Recently, we talked about there was people that were beheaded in Texas and California, and I think New Mexico. There's been several shallow graves that were associated with the drug cartels in the USA. So this is happening, and this is immigrating into the US. In fact, I saw a thing over the weekend. It detailed how easy it is to get into this country, and it showed how hundreds of people will group up on the southern border in Mexico and then just gang rush into the United States. In fact, we reported on one instance over the summer where something like 5,000 people amassed on the American-Mexican border and just walked into the U.S., and the U.S. felt obliged to put all these people up in pretty nice hotels, all at the taxpayers' expense. So this is really nothing new. There's Miley Cyrus. Shorts are so short you can see almost everything. Boy, people sure talk about Miley Cyrus, man. I don't know why. It's really gotten under their skin. Hey, listen, this is the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray, your prophet du jour, broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio from beautiful Crestone, Colorado. This is Sunday on Monday. Now, if you'd like to call into the show, you can do so. All you got to do, get your pen and paper out. Just call 646-716-8506. And it looks like we don't have any callers, but one thing we can do is we'll type something in here. See, everyone who's on Blog Talk Radio, you've got your own control panel, your own studio. So I'm gonna put something out here, see if we get any kind of response. I'll just put Obama care. So I just type that in, push the button, and then maybe we'll have a caller. A list of callers will appear here when people call into your episode. Let's see if that works. And again, I wanted to say, if you know someone who is talented with the gift of gab in your community, encourage them to get on Blog Talk Radio. it's important that we have more community-related journalists out there, as I like to call myself, a citizen journalist. And I know either you have the talent or someone in your sphere of influence has the gift of gab, and even if they don't, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that people within your community have some choice, that they can go to some alternative media types, citizen journalists, and be able to get a different viewpoint of what's happening in their community and in their state and in our country. So they can go to a place like Blog Talk Radio and have an opportunity to have a voice in their community, and of course it goes out all over the world, and it's a hell of an opportunity. It doesn't cost that much. It's a lot of fun. Blog Talk Radio archives all of your shows, so if somebody misses your show, they can go online and then retrieve your show. And of course there's a listing of what you're talking about, so they can chronicle what was talked about and decide for themselves whether or not they want to listen to your show or not. I mean, it's a hell of a service, and it definitely is the 21st century. It's the new media, and I just love it. No longer do we have to rely upon the smug elite liberals, the progressive socialist crowd at NPR to get our news and viewpoint. So, it's a beautiful thing. All right. Moving on. So this is an interesting story. I'm kind of surprised to see this. Remember, we used to hear a lot about Blackwater back, I'm trying to think, they were involved in some big scandal in Iran or Iraq where they were involved in a firefight and they ended up shooting some innocents, and the media made a big deal of it because they were so against the Iraqi war. And during that time, and even now, the American government, rather than having their own forces, have been hiring basically people like Blackwater to be mercenaries. You can get big, huge contracts. I actually have a relative that is working in Afghanistan as we speak, and he's providing security for military caravans. And I can promise you these guys are all decked out in body armor and have sophisticated communications and other type of electronic gear, and they're armed to the teeth, and they're paid for by the American government. And maybe because private contractors might do things that the regular government soldiers won't do. But this story is kind of interesting because Blackwater, like I said, they came under a lot of scrutiny. They lost a lot of their business, and the members of Black Hawk and the organization were really blackballed by the American government, and it was rumored that they were no longer getting these security contracts from the American government. And part of that was because of their politics. They were Republican, and of course this administration goes after anybody like a savage beast that is anyway related to the Republican Party or conservatism. But this guy, he's taken a big chance here. This guy from Blackwater, he's saying that we could have saved Ambassador Chris Stevens back in Benghazi on 9/11, 2012. He says his name is Eric Prince, the founder of the private security firm called Blackwater, has stated that he believes that Obama administration turned its back on Americans the night of 9/11/12. Prince says that if Blackwater had been in control of the consulate, Ambassador Stevens would still be alive. It is no secret that our current president has made deals, backed and armed Muslim terrorists. By doing so, he has interfered with foreign vendors. That might be the worst thing, though. We do need more of our products to be made in the USA. However, Saudi Arabia has determined contracts with American vendors and is now offering them to companies anywhere but America. So here's another example of Saudi Arabia is really turning their back on the U.S. And you got to understand why they would do that. Now, I was talking about earlier, there's President Obama bowing to the King of Saudi Arabia. But what President Obama has done since then is very much alienated Saudi Arabia. Because remember, Saudi Arabia is Sunni. And Iran is Shiite. And the two sides are at war with each other, even though they both believe in the Prophet Muhammad. And all of the overtures and the bundles that the Obama administration has had dealing with Iran and those bumbling deals to the advantage of Iran has deeply impressed the Saudi Arabians that President Obama is not operating in Saudi Arabia's best interest. And it's creating a rift between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, one of our best allies in the Middle East. But it's all religious now. The president is seen as a backer of Shiaism, basically. And that deeply alarms Saudi Arabia and other people in the Middle East, primarily those that are more moderate than Iran. And then again, I got to remind you, remember, the Iranians are not Arabs, they're Persian. Big difference. All right, moving on. Maybe we'll do this story. I was listening to this woman earlier, and I wasn't sure that we were going to do this story, but now I think probably we will. This story came by way of your daily dose of conservatism. And this is a story from a woman of faith who believes in America and that black people have been deceived. And this story is written by Jenny Thomas. It was in the Daily Caller. And it says Dr. Carol Swain, or Swain, I guess it'd be Swain, Dr. Carol. Give me some of that joy. Sorry about that.
With great gifts at low prices.
These damn commercials just click on, and I actually had this in another format, but I happen to see this and I want to do this story. So at any rate, this woman, she's a black doctor. Her name is Carol Swain, professor of law and political science at Vanderbilt Law School, is a woman of faith and loves this country and the Constitution. She credits American exceptionalism in God's hand for her rise from a family of 12 that was born in rural poverty in Southwest Virginia. But now Swain thinks, quote, we have all of these forces pulling us away from faith to secularism. And, quote, she says, as a black person, it bothers me that the America I know and love, I feel like, is being destroyed by the black man. I don't understand why, she said, discussing her serious concerns about President Obama's legacy in an exclusive interview with the Daily Caller. Quote, not even a native-born black man who has the history, the roots in this country. It bothers me that so many black people have been deceived into supporting programs and policies that are killing them, she continued. She worries about Obama's governance and how he erodes constitutional freedoms. Quote, she says, I value free speech. You know, I take the clause of the Constitution very seriously, Swain said, and what I see in America right now is our freedom of speech and our freedom of religion, freedom of association, all of that being totally eroded. And when I look at the Fourth Amendment about the search and seizure, I see we have no protection. We are living in Orwellian experience where we are almost under 24-hour surveillance. We never know when we are having a private conversation, end of quote. And in this two-party interview, she discusses the Tea Party, social justice, as a Marxist concept of administering compassion through government and what helps people analyze American changes. So let's go ahead and listen to this interview. I have it, let's see, right up here, and I actually have it queued up so that we don't have to listen to the advertisement. I hope not. But again, I give you Dr. Ginny Thomas, or rather, Ginny Thomas is the author. Excuse me. The professor is Carol Swain. All right. And remember, she is a black person and a political science doctor. All right, so it's going to take a moment here, and then we're going to have Dr. Swain on the Trailer Park Profit Program. I mean, this is pretty exciting stuff. Doctor, doctor, the doctor, doctor, doctor. All right, this is getting kind of painful here. Uh-oh. Come on, doctor, bring it on. We might have to hear this commercial now. And this might just not work. Unfortunately, this is citizen journalism. But thanks a lot for being here and putting up with me. Here, we'll just go down and do this other one then. Maybe this is the way to go. It could be that I have two of these open. Two of these stories about the good doctor. So we're going to go back to this. Remember I said the one with the commercial? We're going to go back to this deal with the commercial. And then we'll get right in. We'll have to bear some of this computer, some of this commercial, but you guys can take it. Here, I'll try to turn it down.
And when you buy them at Kroger, right now you get 4 times the fuel points. Right, Spirit. Low prices.
All right, Kroger. Hey, I'm all for food. How about you? All right, here we go. Here's the interview.
Tell us how your life story relates to American exceptionalism, faith, and politics. Well, when I look at my success as a university professor now and as a business entrepreneur and just all the things I'm involved in, even feeling like I'm a voice for a lot of people that otherwise would not have someone speaking for them, I look at my background as being one of 12, born and raised in rural poverty, all dropped out of school. I know I live in the greatest nation in the world, that someone from my background was able to get an education. I have been able to be successful, and I think that a lot of it has to do with, I believe that there is a God that orders our footsteps and opens doors for us and puts us where we need to be, the right time. And I believe that for Americans at this time, we have all of these forces that are pulling us away, from faith to secularism. And yet, for someone like me, there's no way you can look at my life, where I started from, the opportunities I've had, and not say that there isn't a God and there isn't something special about America. What do you think President Obama's legacy is going to be? I am very curious about 100 years from now, when we're both gone and people actually get into those records about about this point in history when we elected a president that we knew so little about his background, and just this whole idea of the power that he's had over the media. I read George Orwell's 1984, and I feel like we are living an Orwellian experience, and that there's something terribly, terribly wrong in America. And as a black person, it bothers me that the America that I know and love, I feel like it's being destroyed by a black man. I don't understand why, but I wonder, is this payback for slavery? I have no idea why that the changes that I think are so destructive to our Constitution and our American way of life is being led by someone that's not only, a black man, but he's not even a native-born black man that has the history
Yikes.
of the roots in the country. And it seems bizarre, and I think 100 years from now, it will be even more bizarre when people are able to
Amen.
look at the connections. And I don't understand this point in history or why we've made the decisions that we've made. And it bothers me that so many black people have been deceived into supporting programs and policies that are killing them. When I look at the changes that have taken place in this country that bother me the most, they are rooted in the Constitution. Because I believe in America, and I believe in American exceptionalism and the Bill of Rights. And so, as a person that is a devout Christian, the First Amendment is something that I take very seriously. And if you haven't figured out now, I value my free speech. You know, I take that cause very seriously. And what I see in America right now is our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, freedom of association, all of that being totally eroded. And when I look at the Fourth Amendment about the search and seizure, I see, that we had no protection. We are living an Orwellian experience where we are almost under 24-hour surveillance. We never know when we're having a private conversation, maybe out in the woods without your cell phone, you're having a private conversation, but in your car, with OnStar and the GPS finder, we are just under 24-hour surveillance. And it bothers me, this whole idea of a person, under our Constitution, under our rule of law, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And so to me, it's not acceptable for the president or for anyone else to kill an American citizen suspected of anything. If they've not been, tried, if they've not been, brought to justice, then I don't think that it's the right of the government to take a human life, certainly not that of an American citizen. And so when I look at our country, it feels like that we have collectively lost that sense of who we are. We've lost our minds because we don't have a constitution that matters anymore. This didn't just happen with President Obama, that there were some Republicans, too, that sort of set the stage for this. And when we want to change America, we have to change it by electing the right candidates. And it's not Democrats versus Republicans, because there are plenty of people in the Republican Party that are fully on board with the agenda of what's taking place today. And as a person, again, that believes in the Constitution, I'm a woman of faith. I don't like what's happening in America, and I don't think most Americans do. And I think that the majority of Americans don't like what's happening because the media, they're largely in on this. There's not a lot of places for them to be able to have their voices heard.
Are you saying that you might be sympathetic with the Tea Party extremists?
Well,
extremists?
We're about honesty and transparency, right? I have spoken at some Tea Party events, and the very first one, I first started out just defending the right of the Tea Party to exist, and then I started getting invitations to speak at Tea Party events, and they were being accused of being racist, and I'm thinking, and then all of these invitations are pouring in for me to speak, and they're saying it's all white crowds, and I'm thinking that if people like me say no, of course it's going to be all white crowds. And so I can't remember which year, my first Tea Party event, and there were all these older men that were veterans that had tears in their eyes, and they were just so moved. And one of the things I said, is that we have a constitution and there's still freedom of speech and we have the right to assemble and protest, and it applies to white people too.
Yeah, baby.
Okay, so Carol, with 49% of Americans now receiving some sort of public assistance, with more people on means-tested welfare than full-time workers in our country, with 46.5 million Americans living in poverty, one of the highest rates, we have two different visions of compassion, it looks like,
Oh,
from
please.
liberals and conservatives. Talk to us about what you see about government dependency and compassion versus entrepreneurism and other forms of compassion.
Talk about
the left loves to use the concept of social justice. And I think probably most universities, they have a social justice program. Churches are using that phrase, social justice, not really realizing that it's a Marxist term. The universities know what it is, but not the churches. And I think that the compassion that we should feel for our fellow man is being expressed in the wrong way. And one of the biggest problems that we have is that the people that are making the decisions to help the poor are people that are elites. They have never been poor themselves. They have no idea what they're doing. And that's why their programs fail, because they don't know anything about the group of people that they're trying to help.
Exactly.
I'm on school that you teach a man how to fish. You know, you might give him a fish and feed him for a day, but the most effective thing is to teach people how to help themselves. And I believe that there is a place that, you know, for being compassionate, but a lot of what passes today for compassionism is not really going to help people long term. And I think that the social welfare programs that we have today are not sustainable. And there's all this big push, you know, for amnesty that would legalize and bring in even more poor people when we can't take care of the ones we already have.
Amen.
And so I think it's just so important for us to realize that we have to come up with ways of helping people be the best that they can. And not everyone is supposed to go to college, but everyone can have an occupation. There are things that people can do. And I would like to see vocational education programs return to the high schools.
Exactly.
And in some cases, the middle schools, because there are some children that, because of how far down they are, that you would never be able to make them college level, but there's no reason why they cannot be productive citizens. And I believe that the conservative values and principles that really have sustained many communities, that they do work, and that we have to find a way other than what we're doing right now to address poverty, because just giving people welfare or encouraging them, you know, to creating an incentive system where you're better off not working than working, I think that's very destructive to the individuals themselves. It's destructive to our society, and it's not sustainable, and it's wrong.
And it's wrong. See, she's so right on. I love this woman. She's so intelligent and just aware. And how many people would be astonished to see this black woman talking like she just did? A lot of people would be astonished to hear that there are actually black people out there that are conservatives. And obviously she has respect for the Tea Party, or she wouldn't go and speak to them. But I love that little white reporter. She says, "So what do you think of the radical Tea Party?" See, that's not how a journalist would ask a question. I mean, you give away your bias. But this woman reporter, she has no sense of journalism or dignity. She already goes in there with the preconceived notion that those Tea Party people are radicals. Yeah, they're radicals. They want a balanced budget. That's radical in George Orwell's America, or that's radical in Obama's plantation economy, to have a balanced budget. And that's exactly what I was talking about Friday. We really live in an Orwellian Ayn Rand world right now. Everything they said would happen or could happen has happened. But I love this black woman. I mean, she's just calm and cool and rational. And I like what she said about our education system. That's the way it is in most of Europe. There is a point in your K through 12 education. Before you go into high school, they're kind of like cattle. You decide whether or not you want to go to college or go to trade school. And a lot of people aren't cut out for college. I mean, they're just not. And that's part of the problem right now. We have so many millennials out there that got college degrees that aren't worth anything. And when the government is involved with handing out cheap money for kids to go to school, then all of these universities and colleges, public colleges and universities, become paper mills, basically. And these colleges, these public colleges, are greedy. They want to build their empires. And so they love all this cheap federal money, and they're getting all kinds of cheap federal grants for building more buildings and stuff to attract more and more students. I mean, it gets to the point where it's a racket. But we obviously today have too many college-educated people and not enough college jobs. And unfortunately, the jobs that would be available for people who want to work in the trades aren't available because we don't manufacture as many goods as we used to. In construction or in the trades, a lot of those jobs are being taken by illegal aliens. So it's like it's a plan, almost a conspiracy to try to destroy this economy and hurt people in the process. By allowing all these illegal, unskilled aliens into the country, you're taking away a lot of entry-level jobs into the trades. That's exactly what's happening in America, and how a lot of Americans have lost their jobs to aliens. I mean, if you believe that aliens are doing jobs that Americans won't do, I'd have to tell you, you're sadly mistaken. That's not the case at all. There's a lot of jobs out there people would take if they weren't getting government welfare. I mean, people by nature are survivors, and that's why the whole mindset of the progressive socialist movement, there's this psychological component to it. They understand that it's easy to lure people out of the workforce if they're promised free stuff. A lot of people are just naturally lazy and complacent. And they're happy to live on a meager income if that income is provided for by the taxpayers. A lot of this it's psychological. It goes right to the root of what we are as human beings. You know, the idea of the community garden was tried when the Pilgrims came over to the United States. That's how they got started. They said, okay, we're going to do this thing in America as a collective, where everybody works in the garden, helps build the houses, and we all share the bounty. Well, guess what? It didn't work. Because you can't deny the psychology of some individuals. Some people in the collective will work hard, and other people will slough off. And in socialism, you're expected to give everybody the same reward. And it doesn't work. Socialism defies basic human tenets. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't work. There's always people in the real world that work harder, that are smarter, that are more innovative, and then there's people that are just workers, like the people at Walmart. And if you work at Walmart and all you do all day is scan, that doesn't take a lot of skill. And it should be reflected in your wage. And no, you're not deserved a living wage. If you can live on a checker salary at Walmart, have at it. Because in a capitalist world, in a laissez-faire style capitalist economy, you get paid for what you're worth. And if your worth is demonstrated by your ability to take a product and scan it, you're not worth much. If you can build a house, you're worth more. If you can manage a department at Walmart, you're worth more. If you can be the pharmacy at Walmart, you're worth more. And it's a very seductive idea, socialism, social justice, which I forgot. Social justice is a Marxist term. Social justice. Who in their right mind would be against social justice? I mean, the word usage in propaganda, it's so thought out. It's just world class. I mean, it's almost brilliant. social justice. I mean, did you know it was Marxist? I actually didn't know that, but I'll have to check some of my reading someday, and I'll bet I'll find out that's the case, that social justice is a nomenclature of Marxism. We'll have to look into that, and when I find out about that sometime down the road, I'll let you know. But this woman is brilliant, and she's absolutely right. You know, she's talking about how America allows for success of people that work hard. That's the beauty of America. That's the calling of America for most people, except for people that are pouring into our nation from Mexico that understand that there's a lot of free stuff here, and the gringos are really kind of silly, stupid people that aren't worthy of respect. And you guys have no idea. I know most of you people out there, you're kind of suburban white crackers, and you haven't spent much time on the wrong side of the tracks. Well, I have. And I've talked to a lot of Mexicans out there, legal and illegal, and they basically tell me the same thing. They think you Americans are a bunch of dummies, and they know that you're being taxed to provide programs to give free stuff to illegal aliens. They understand that the Catholic Church is operating in this country like an enemy, giving aid and comfort to criminals that illegally pass into this country. They understand what the hell's going on. They understand how the Democrats and President Obama are trying to make them citizens, and they understand which side their bread's buttered. And when they become citizens, they're going to become Democrats, and that they're going to tell their kids to be Democrats. That's the way the Democrats have planned it. That's the way they hope it works out. Now, maybe they're going to be wrong. You know, a lot of the Mexicans I know that are here legally, who came here legally, they don't like these illegal Mexicans in this country. And they don't see it as necessarily a race thing, but they see it as a thing because they understand that these people are here illegally, and they don't give a hoot about American law. They understand Mexican Americans, most Mexican Americans understand that all these illegals in this country, which are mostly Mexican, are not necessarily good people. In fact, they're not good people, and they kind of resent them being here and making a big deal over their race. And they're watching what's going on. They see the gringos get labeled as racist because they want to see the border enforced. I mean, they see the double standard, and I have Mexican friends who are in the landscaping industry, like the Trailer Park Prophet, that understand that the illegal aliens have ruined the landscaping industry. I used to buy trees from a family in the San Luis Valley at San Luis. I've been buying trees from this family for 2 generations, and they tell me that the illegal aliens, they go out and they dig trees out of the forest, and they don't get a permit, and they tear up the forest floor, and they leave garbage, and they're just filthy, and then they take their trees and compete with the legal tree diggers, and they cut their prices, and they're killing the tree digging business that many of my friends in the landscaping business depend on. They undercut their own people, and they don't pay workers' comp, they don't pay taxes, and in the case of Gunnison, hell, they get all kinds of various services from the Gunnison County governments, and that's the case all across the United States. They get subsidized housing, they get food vouchers, they get food stamps, they get free health care, they get daycare, they get clothing. The list goes on and on and on of all the government handouts that people get in communities all across the United States. And one thing I meant to mention the other day, we're talking about the Gunnison Country Times, or as I like to call them, the Gunnison Dead Tree News. They were talking about how the illegal aliens in Gunnison were protesting, and they had a person there that was an Obamacare navigator, So the illegal aliens get an Obamacare navigator, but where's your Obamacare navigator? So we're actually paying this Obamacare navigator to organize demonstrations against the U.S. government. That's how screwed up our country is getting under President Obama. Where's your Obamacare navigator? Ask yourself that. But the illegal aliens in Gunnison, Colorado, they have their own Obamacare navigator. How do you feel about that, gringo? Or you tax-paying Latino? I mean it, man. You minority people have really got to wake up. Alright, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray. We're broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio from Crestone, Colorado. Thanks a lot for being here. We're getting more and more people all the time, man. I really appreciate it. I try to put as much time as I possibly can into this show, and I hope it shows. I hope this show is refreshing. Maybe we give you a little bit different perspective on what's going on. What is this? Oh, it's an advertisement. I thought it might be some kooky story we could do. All right, back to the Trailer Park Prophet Show. I mentioned this before. Obamacare enrollment falls 85% short of goal. Bloomberg puts the best spin possible on the number of new Obamacare signups. These are not yet official enrollees who have paid their first month's premium, though they were on the federal exchanges. I mean, what did they have? 100,000 signups so far. This is such a mess. Obamacare. And then I mentioned on Friday they did that document dump. The Obama administration did the Friday document dump, and it looks like that the small business owners out there aren't going to be able to get on the website for another year. And remember that 85% of people in the United States work for small business. So Obamacare, not only was it not up by the end of November, it's not going to be up by the end of 2014, and all the small business owners are going to have to go to the federal exchanges on their own, and I can't even imagine how this is going to work without the website. So now we're led to believe, and I was thinking about this over the weekend because I talked about this on Friday, about how small businesses aren't going to be able to utilize the Obamacare website because it's not going to be ready for another year. So now, what are these little business owners going to do? Now they're going to have to, I guess, physically go to the Obamacare state exchanges and ask to be presented whatever actual plans are going to be made available. And a lot of these states, remember, there's only one plan. Like it or not, it's like how Henry Ford used to sell cars. You can have any color car you want, said Henry Ford, as long as it's black. Well, that's going to be the case for a lot of these small businesses, and they're going to have to spend vital time from their jobs, unless they have somebody they can send down to the Obamacare exchange. And they're going to have to go and look at these plans and decide which one they want to sign up for. I mean, it's going to take a lot of time and money to do this. Plus, I don't think Obamacare was actually manned to be able, or to have to be able to take on all these applications from 85% of the small businessmen out there. Everyone, okay, so 85% of businesses are small business, and those are men and women and husbands and wives and their family businesses and the like. And so now they're going to have to try and go to the exchanges and sign up. So that means that Obamacare has to have a whole boatload of Obamacare employees to greet these small business owners that are going to be flooding into the state because the deadlines are coming up, and help them fill out the forms. And they don't have the personnel. Obamacare and these state exchanges, I don't think they have the personnel. And they certainly realize that, and so I imagine now they're frantically trying to hire people to man these positions to explain these antiquated insurance policies to these desperate small business owners. I mean, this is going to cause a lot of people to understand that President Obama really did kind of lie to them in a very big way. And I really have a feeling that this particular aspect of the Obamacare abomination, these small businesses, and them scrambling around in the next year to try and get their employees signed up, and the loss of productivity, I think this is going to change a lot of people's minds that own small businesses, that this Obama administration and the progressive socialist movement and the PC movement are for the birds. A lot of people are going to come to that realization. And I really do see the Republicans not only taking the House in 2014 and the Senate, and I feel like whoever runs for president under the Republican banner in 2016 is going to get elected. Okay, does everybody know who Robert Reich is? Robert Reich is a progressive socialist economist. I think he's a Harvard professor, but he's one of my friends on Facebook, and he is writing a regular article here. He says, we don't know yet why the Metro North... Oh, I'm not even going to read this to you. Basically, what Robert Reich is talking about, there was a wreck this weekend. I believe it was in the Bronx, of a Metro North train, and the driver may have been at fault, but it's worth noting that last May the Metro North train derailed in Connecticut after being struck by another train, injuring 73. And then he goes into, and you've heard these studies a million times, about how our infrastructure needs repair, that our bridges and a lot of other public works assets are in disrepair and they need to be replaced. So then he goes through all of that. Robert Reich, he talks about the National Society of Civil Engineers, and they pointed out that there's a need for at least $200 billion a year for just basically maintenance on our infrastructure. And he talks about how 1 in 9 bridges is in dramatic need of repair, and in fact are structurally deficient. And so he says all of that, and then he goes on to say, this is how he ends the article. He says, while other nations are building transportation systems for the future, Congress won't modernize our outmoded one, even though borrowing costs for the U.S. are at near historic lows. The investment would spur growth and productivity, and millions of jobless Americans could benefit directly or indirectly from the work that could result. And I thought he took a hack in here at Republicans. Maybe he didn't this time. But here again is the psychology of the progressive socialist movement. For one thing, he doesn't talk about President Obama's stimulus package, which was roughly $800 billion, and most of that $800 billion was supposed to be stimulus money. The majority of that money went to bail out governments and retirement plans that were underfunded or were badly abused, and the promises to the government employees that were way beyond the norms of what regular people got paid for the same work. But the problem is that their stimulus money, $800 billion of it, basically went to governments that needed bailing out, and the rest of that money went to the green initiative of the Obama administration, and most of those companies that got the green money for solar panels and wind turbines and all of the like. Some 40 of those companies that got that stimulus money went bankrupt. And all of the owners of all of those companies that basically took all that stimulus money and then went bankrupt, they were all supporters of Obama. They gave money to his campaign. They're supporters of the Democratic Party. So all that money, most of that $800 billion of stimulus money went down the toilet, and President Obama promised us that the stimulus money was going to go to shovel-ready jobs. In fact, the president even laughs about how that was such a lie one time. We played it here on the Trailer Park Profit Show. He actually was asked about those shovel-ready jobs that were supposed to be in the Obama administration $800 billion stimulus deal, and he laughed about it. Yeah, well, we didn't really have a lot of shovel-ready jobs because they could have went like this. They could have went to improve our infrastructure, and they didn't. It bailed out government and gave money to Obama campaign advisors. And so I wrote here, Robert Reich is one of my friends, I guess, now, which is kind of odd. I'm surprised he hasn't defriended me yet, but I wrote back to Robert Reich. I said, yeah, right there, Robert Reich. And what does the $750 billion Obama stimulus do? Nothing. Nothing but give free money to progressive socialist campaign contributors and bail out the government plantation / gravy train. No response. Robert Reich, if you would like to be on the Trailer Park Profit Show, or if anybody's listening that's friends with Robert Reich, have him give us a call at 646-716-8506. Yeah, we celebrate diversity here at the Trailer Park Profit Show, so we would love to have the progressive socialist darling economist to give us a call here on the Trailer Park Profit Show. And believe me, if you're a liberal and you don't like what you're hearing here, you get on the air first, because we want to listen to you first. I really do. That's why I read Robert Reich. Oh, I got some big news. Bob Denver. I'm from Denver, Colorado, so I always kind of had a interest in Bob Denver. Bob Denver was a star on Gilligan's Island. He played the title role of Gilligan's Island. And it was all over the internet yesterday that Bob Denver, Gilligan of Gilligan's Island, died. And a lot of people were making tribute to the fact that this guy that a lot of us baby boomers grew up with had passed away. And I think I speak for everybody when I say I think everybody liked Gilligan, who was called by the skipper his little buddy. Well, it turns out that Gilligan, aka Bob Denver, actually died in 2004, but somehow it got out there in the internet that he just recently died, and there was all these pictures posted and everything. So now, again, we are recognizing the loss of an American icon and wishing Bob Denver the best, even though he's been dead for a few years now. So, carry on, little buddy. I haven't read this story. I'm not really sure what's in there. It says Supreme Court ends Liberty University lawsuit against Obamacare. And this is kind of a stunner because Liberty University is another one of the entities out there that I believe is using a class action lawsuit against Obamacare, stating that they have First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and freedom of religion to decide for themselves if they want to provide birth control and other type of maternity services, not maternity, but abortion, to their employees at Liberty University. And it looked like that this particular case was going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, but according to this, it is actually been decided by the Supreme Court that they're not going to hear this case from Liberty University, which kind of makes sense. The same issue has been decided to be heard before the Supreme Court, having to do with Hobby Lobby, because Hobby Lobby has the same sort of claim that the Liberty University has against Obamacare, that the Hobby Lobby people, the owners of Hobby Lobby, it's privately owned, they feel like their religious beliefs are against providing birth control and the day after pill and abortions to their employees, which of course Obamacare will provide. So, even though it is kind of a loss and my friends are kind of upset about it, just remember out there, guys, that the Supreme Court did decide to hear Hobby Lobby's lawsuit. Also, and I wrote in regards to this, I go, in the USA, only the Muslims have real freedom to practice their hateful religion. And really, you know, I think this goes to the heart of it, because I have seen a lot of stories, and I've reported on this before, that Muslims are not going to have to pay into Obamacare. And that's because of some of the later tenets of Islam after Muhammad died, about Muslims not being allowed to be involved with financial instruments like insurance. So all the Muslims in the country are not going to have to pay into Obamacare. And I've seen a lot of stories that support this position. And I've come out before and said that this was the case, and then I read some stuff that said that's not the case, that Muslims are not exempted from Obamacare. But pretty much every article I read now says definitively that Muslims are not going to have to pay into Obamacare because of this Islamic tenet that Muslims are not supposed to pay into financial instruments, i.e. the insurance policy. And the kicker is that Muslims would be then available for free Obamacare. Muslims will not have to pay for Obamacare, but I've read other accounts that say that just because they don't pay into Obamacare doesn't mean they won't get medical treatment. The Amish are also, as they say in legal terms, held harmless from Obamacare. The Amish are not going to have to pay into Obamacare. But here again, if God forbid some Amish person or any person is hurt, but in this case an Amish person is hurt, they can walk right into any hospital and get care. And this, let's see, what do we got? We got 8 minutes. All right, let's do this story. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you think America is safer today than they were 2 years ago? Well, this actually comes from the Huffington Post, or as Rush Limbaugh says, the Huffington Post. Article written here by Dave Jamieson says the lawmakers who lead the House and Senate Intelligence Committees both said on Sunday that they believe the United States is less safe from a terror attack than 2 years ago. And remember, people like this, Dianne Feinstein, they're in on all of the top secret intelligence briefings on terrorism. Goes on to say, interviewed on CNN State of the Union, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat from California, said she believed that there are now more terrorists with the ideological means to carry out a bombing in the USA. She said, I think terror is worldwide, said Feinstein, who chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee. Quote, there are new bombs, very big bombs, trucks being reinforced for those bombs. There are bombs that go through magnetometers. The bomb maker is still alive. There are groups than ever. There are more groups than ever, and there is huge malevolence out there. So these are the words coming from a lady who has insight to all of the CIA and NSA briefings saying this. And Feinstein added that there was a real displaced aggression in this very fundamentalist jihadist Islamic community, and that is that the West is responsible for everything that goes wrong, and that the only thing that's going to solve this is Islamic Sharia law. Representative Mike Rogers, a Republican from Michigan, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, said he agreed with Feinstein's assessment. And this is just the stuff they'll admit to. This ain't really telling us all the down and dirty stuff that they have privy to. Mike Rogers went on to say, he says, I absolutely agree that we're not safer today for the same reasons, he said. The pressure on our intelligence services to get to prevent an attack is enormous. Asked about the recent revelations of the National Security Spying Program, Rogers said he worried that the disclosures were distracting the agency from its work. He says, our fear is every time we do that, we take them away from their focus, which is what is Al-Qaeda's next event. And then we have YouTube, but we're not going to play that at Dianne Feinstein. But, you know, these are stunning revelations. White House discusses scrapping entire Obamacare website. According to Newsmax by Todd Veman, the abysmal rollout of the Obamacare individual mandate last month exposed a website so badly flawed the White House officials considered junking it. In my understanding, or at least what I've heard and read, is that anytime you have some big massive website like this, if it's not constructed properly in the beginning, in the foundation, it's almost not repairable. I mean, would they say that they were going to have to write millions of lines of code in November to fix the Obamacare website? Millions of lines of code. Now, I don't understand how that works, but it takes a hell of a lot of man hours to produce millions of lines of code. Oh, this story. Let's do this story. President Obama this weekend gave an interview. And let's see, who did he give it to? All right, I'm not really sure, but it says it's really no surprise that an ideologue who is more beholden to his vision for America than the Constitution he swore an oath to as a condition of office of the presidency would shrug off low approval numbers. If Obama actually cared about the will of the people, then Obamacare never would have been passed. Which, remember, during the Obamacare debate, 2009-2010, the poll numbers still were over 50% against Obamacare, or government-run health care. Don't forget that. People are losing their doctors and their plans, and millions are seeing premiums increase. None of this has anything to do with the website. Obviously, such upheaval is making people feel betrayed. And this is turning up in the president's low ratings of how trustworthy he is perceived. And now here's Obama. He says, quote, I got reelected in part because people think I was trustworthy and they knew I was working on their behalf, Obama said. Very rarely do the good things that happen get the same attention as the things that aren't working well. Well, there's nothing working well right now in the Obama administration. And Obamacare is emblematic of that. But I just thought it was beyond belief that Obama would say that the reason he got reelected was because he's trustworthy. I mean, really?
60 seconds.
And he might be trustworthy to the people that are on the Obama board, but I have a feeling that President Obama's fortunes are going to continue to turn against him. All right, everybody, drizzle, drazzle, drizzle, drone. Time for this prophet to go home. We'll see you on Wednesday for Hump Day with the Prophet. Have any kind of day you want. Bye-bye, everybody.